Hello. Today's video, we're going to go over some techniques that can be used to do drawings, or in this case, scratchboard. So, like last time, I have a X-Acto knife and a number 11 blade. This is scratch paper. It is a little different than scratchboard. Scratchboard is thicker, and scratching it is a different experience. Most of the time I use this paper for sketching, doing studies before I do an actual piece, and then for practice. So seeing as we're just kind of going over techniques, I'm going to use the scratch paper that we started last time in the last video. So the first technique we're going to talk about is hatching. Hatching is just a series of parallel lines, and you can do those either small or large lines, and you're just doing them in a row to start creating depth in a piece. And when you cross hatch, you make different sets of those lines and overlap them. So when we're making fur, you can make tiny parallel lines to create the different locations where the fur would be catching the light. If you've ever looked at an animal's fur, it's never completely even. There's always some patches that are more exposed to the light than others, and that's where you're really getting these little tiny lines. So we're just doing these little lines, make some parts a little brighter by doing another set of lines over the top of the previous set. And then you can layer in some longer lines to create those longer hairs that are a little more exposed to the light. Now this is on the shadow side of the face, so you're catching light differently than on this side. And that's another thing when you're looking at real world examples. I often do not work from photos, but I know a lot of artists that do. And when they do, when you're either working from a live model or you're looking at the object that you're drawing, you really can see those differences of where the shadow actually is hitting an object and where the shadow is. And you'll notice these patterns where, oh, in this area, a little bit more light is showing than in this area. And if our light source is kind of in this area, far away, it's going to hit this side of the face and highlight that side a little more. So we do a little bit of cross hatching, just creating little layers, which helps bring out the depth in the piece. One of the things that can drive some people nuts about doing scratch art is that you are going to get weird scratching sounds while you're making them work. It never really has bothered me, but sometimes you'll be aware of it when you're, say, doing scratch art in a coffee house or something like that. It might drive people around you a little crazy, so that's something to be conscious of as well. So we just keep creating little bits of depth. If we were Bob Ross, we would be making happy little monsters, but in this case we're making a not so happy little monster. A lot of the time when I'm creating artwork, I'll do a study kind of working through some of the ideas. Although my final work rarely looks like the study. I continue to continue playing with the concepts as I'm working on the actual piece. And that is sometimes different than the way some other people work. You kind of have to find a method that works well for you. For me, I just prefer getting in here, not doing too much planning, and just letting it flow and finding kind of what the piece wants to become. So from here, you're seeing how that cross-hatching just keeps creating more and more depth, creating lighter and lighter spots in the drawing. If you were working with like pen and ink, you would be creating darker and darker textures, but with the scratchboard, you are creating the highlights. There's really no mistakes in art. You can pretty much turn anything that seems like a mistake into a part of the piece. Although, if you start getting tired, it's better to stop and collect yourself and go back at it later. That way you don't ruin something that you've already been working on.